Hapon. Thank you for joining us. Ito ang nag-iisang Kababayan Today, your premier resource for anything and everything Filipino and Filipino-American. Kung saan po tuwing hapon, araw-araw, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, pinagdiriwang po natin ang Kababayan Pride. Nakikilala po natin mga kababayan na maaring kapulutan na mga inspirasyon based on their stories and how they've made it here in the U.S. One story that I'd like to share with you is from a Filipina, a CEO, founder of her own company. I am such a fan of this woman. She's not only successful professionally, but she's also very successful personally, married for almost 40 years together with her husband and is now a proud grandmother. Pero sa pagbisita po niya sa atin dito sa Kababayan Today, marami po siyang i-share, ibinahagi na kanyang mga tips for living, tips for success dito po. And I hope you learn from this. Cora Tellez, I'm so honored to have you in front of me, interviewing you. The first time I met this wonderful woman was at a gala in San Francisco, where she was being honored as one of the most influential Filipino women around the globe. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor for me to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
Cora is the founder and CEO of Sterling HSA. It's a company that's based out of the East Coast?
Oakland, California.
Oakland, California. And tell us about it. What is it about?
So it is a company that administers what are called health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, accounts that are frankly related to healthcare, because that's my background.
Yes, your background was in healthcare, and you actually worked for different companies, including Kaiser, and you sit on the board of a lot of organizations as well. What made you decide to branch out and start your own?
Well, that's a great question. So this is the year 2000, and the really short answer to that question is I flunked retirement.
Oh, what do you mean?
There you go. So,
that's very interesting.
Well, look at me. I'm 64. I'm a Lola. I have 2 grandchildren.
You don't look 64.
Married 38 years. And I had completed what, was a really great run of corporate life. I was an executive at Kaiser, Blue Shield, Prudential, and my last corporate job was to run HealthNet and all of its health insurance plans. And I thought, well, I'm going to retire. And my husband was dead set against it. He said, you're going to drive all of us crazy because all of this energy.
Okay.
So it was wonderful. I'm very blessed and very fortunate to be able to create a company called Sterling HSA.
Wait, so were you really, did you experience retirement for a few years and then decided to start Sterling, or? I
experienced retirement for 2 hot months. And what happened was that private equity companies called on me, thought that we could do something together. They'd buy a company, I'd run it. Sounded like a great model. Unfortunately, it would take a long time for us to consummate a deal, and we were close to 2 companies, and it turned out that a strategic buyer was willing always to pay more than my financial backer, so we couldn't do the deal.
It sounds very complicated. It sounds to me like you're not your typical Filipina woman. Dalagang Pilipina, babaeng Pilipina, having been raised in the Philippines myself. I moved here, 10 years ago. And, we're taught to be more submissive. We're taught to be, in the Philippines, it's still widely accepted that Filipinas stay at home. What was it like for you venturing out into the corporate jungle?
Well, it's curious because my mother, a very devout Catholic Filipino woman, had her views of me, which is that I would be a nun, and she picked out a convent for me. Poor mom. And it turned out that I'm not a terribly obedient person. I don't handle authority well.
Is that good or bad?
Well, it depends. I think in some cases, Filipinas have to fight internally really hard to be able to create an identity that's consonant with our core values, but also will not minimize who we are. And so one of the things I've learned, for example, is that Filipino women in particular have a terrible self-image. So we derail ourselves long before we go to work.
What is a terrible self-image? For people out there, maybe they're thinking the same thing and, oh, that's terrible.
Well, the self-image is we should be hardworking. We should not be particularly assertive. We should be humble and work hard. And most of that is really good. But America doesn't value timidity. It doesn't particularly value humility. It does value assertive women and assertive people in general. And in this country, I think it's important to be assertive because we have a lot to say, and we're damn good at who we are and what we're about. So there's nothing to be particularly afraid of or ashamed of.
Kailan mo na-realize na dapat go-getter, dapat assertive?
I think when I was in high school, I started debating. So this was very early. You know, I came when I was 11 to the United States, and was I think very good. My mom really loved the fact that I was doing well at school and did all of my chores,
We all
etc.
do, don't we?
Yeah,
right?
we do really well.
Asian kids in general, yes.
But I also watch other classmates of mine, and I figured out that there were certain characteristics and traits that enabled some of them to be more successful, certainly than I was. And I thought, now, what will it take for me to succeed? What do I need to do? And it turned out that I had certain core values that were consonant with theirs, but I was not terribly assertive. I was actually rather timid and fearful, and I thought to myself, well, what the heck? You know, what could possibly happen if I try?
Okay.
And that has stood by me. And
so that's when you were coming out of your shell?
Out of high school, yeah, and debating, and took leadership positions in student government.
Right.
My English was okay, but, you know, it was passable. But forcing myself to debate is really key, because when you debate, you are thinking fast on your feet.
Right.
There's no rehearsed lines.
And you
right?
learn to defend yourself without coming across as very abrasive.
Exactly.
So you learn tact.
Right. So the skills you learn in a debate or public speaking is to be able to communicate clearly, to be able to express your views firmly without being abrasive about it, and yet and also to have a point of view.
Amber Alert message from the California Highway Patrol. A child abduction occurred on December 4th at 2:30 p.m.